Howdy, everybody. It's another episode of the Chug Life Podcast, and it has been a pretty crazy month. The new update in the Kilmar Garcia trial is that now he's going to be deported to Uganda. And it's really, really dog shit. Situation, to be frank with you. But I do think that this is kind of one of those monumental events, like we think of the Plessy v. Ferguson and all these other huge monumental cases and situations that arose because of the system's oppression or its attempt. But the light at the end of the tunnel may be here yet for Mr. Garcia and his family. There's an absolutely heartbreaking video of him saying goodbye to his family at the detention center. Just giving them all a big old hug, and it just really lets you into the humanity of the situation. That at the end of the day, there's a daughter that's being affected. There's a wife that's going through this as well. And, you have the grandmother there as well, or whoever. It was a touching video, but it's also, why are we here? It shouldn't have happened. And by all means, the government shouldn't be allowed to do this, to be frank with you. And it's not like they are, because plenty of judges have came out and said, this is fucked up, we shouldn't be doing this. And the most recent, update from the court, it's Judge Zenas, who also is going to be presiding over his other case in Maryland. This judge has a pretty solid understanding of it, but I am curious whether there's going to be more political input here, because the Trump administration has been going ham. They've got a stake in Intel now of $10 billion. And apparently what they did is he basically strong-armed the CEO into allowing them to turn a loan of $9 billion into a stock equity of 10% of the company, which I would assume is probably roughly around $10 billion. But it also makes the U.S. the largest stockholder in Intel. And just to kind of give you an idea of how monumental this is, when we think about this kind of stuff, it doesn't happen unless there is, so we saw this during the Obama era. They did end up taking stake in companies that they basically bailed out of the crash. And, it takes something like that for the government usually to leverage their power, and in that regard, it's almost a given that either you're going to take a loan or a stockholder type share. And at the end of the day, the principle is the same. The government is taking something that is a private organization and making it into their portfolio. And, I'm taking the long-winded way to say that this is some fucked up shit. All right. When you think about the government intruding in the private sector, it's always equated to communism. It's always equated to socialism, and rightfully so. Okay, there's no, I'm not going to be arguing against that today. My argument is that this is so communist, so socialist, that it absolutely will not hit anybody on, that side on the right-wing side of the spectrum, because it's so brazen that they'll almost look over it. And there will be some, sure, that, they're more true to the conspiracy mind, which I think is, honestly, the more conspiracy-driven folk in the right-wing camp may be the best off out of this, because they'll be able to see this from a mile away. As soon as all the dots line up that he's pressuring governors and, shit-talking governors to redraw their maps and basically start gerrymandering en masse. And then he's also holding up federal aid and strong-arming, quote-unquote, leftist governors out of, FEMA aid and humanitarian services because he's an asshole. And you kind of have to take a step back and realize that that's the start of the snowball. Because then it goes to him outright threatening to just send out the National Guard and acting like a dictator in D.C. after sending out the National Guard to D.C., which is unreal because D.C. sure has crime like every city does, but they're actually like statistically going down. They're in some of the better regards of the crime ratios. And especially comparing to last year, you really you just see, damn, the governor's doing work. Damn, the mayor's doing work. It's the system's working, okay? But you look at places like Alabama, Arkansas, you look at Florida, absolute atrocious murder rates and absolute atrocious crime rates. And that, I'm not, making a comparison by any means. I'm just saying that there is going to be crime wherever there is humanity. That's my stance. And I think that would be the stance across most reasonable people. Just because it's impossible to want you, if you really want to be that racist sumbitch, to go and specify that one specific gender or one race or one ethnicity is going to be majorly responsible for crimes. It doesn't add up with the reality, with the statistics. All right, it's pretty fucking square down the middle, dude. And at the end of the day, when you look at mass crimes and you start looking at terroristic type crimes, it's going to swing the other way. So you don't really have a lot of talking points here with racist kind of, viewpoints on statistics. It's really dumb. But the reason I'm bringing this up is it's going to be one of those kind of things that breaks within that sector, I think, of seeing crime like that and thinking that crime can only be perpetrated by specific people and specific quote-unquote types of people. And it damages, it just absolutely erodes society as a whole when you have that mindset, because you have blinders like you wouldn't believe. And, you consider all of the presidential assassination attempts and you get that into some, kind of lineup. The one thing familiarity-wise that you notice across the board is these are your regular schmegular everyday kind of guys. That's just how I looked at it. And so I imagined if you were to have these guys walking through a crowd, you wouldn't be able to pick them out. There's no shot. These are not your what you imagine as a terrorist, as a mass shooter. Okay? So that nullifies that whole aspect even more, I think. But, so snowball effect, right? We've got the National Guard going out. We have all of these kind of more fascist, kind of more forceful ideas of government. And you start seeing the threat do that in more cities. And so you compound that with the fact that we have a concentration camp in Florida, and the fact that there are more across the United States in these red states, because they will be the only ones that allow it to happen. So my question, at what point during that whole issue evolving, you corral all these people, you send all these people off to die. Some of them eventually will stay here. Some of them will eventually sue. Some of them eventually are going to die in the camps, and you're going to have so many deaths, hundreds of deaths on American soil in these quote unquote detainment centers. And what are we going to do as a country when we're faced with this reality once again, that there is a portion of the country that is very blind to us committing atrocities for the sake of the greater good, like we're some fascist fucking country. And it's really easy for me to also generalize like this, when we get to talking about our country potentially turning into a fascist state. But I also try to remember that his support is growing less and less day by day. And he is sick. He is very deathly sick. Matter of fact, I don't think he'll last 25. That's my personal prediction. I think natural causes, quote unquote, soon. And reasons for that is when you look at photos of Trump, you have, like, especially his right arm, his right hand specifically, it is discolored, scabby. It looks like there is like an inch more skin layer on top. And it just, so some of the theories are that he has some issues with his veins. And I don't recall the specific issue because, in my opinion, it's not important here. And if you're listening to this, then you're aware of that most likely. But he doesn't have long. So he dies. Movement stagnates. You have a bunch of crazy ass people that are kind of fighting for, the acceptance of the one guy. And when the one guy dies, I assume it's not going to be very, very good for everybody. Frankly, I think MTG will shit her pants. She will 100% be crying on the screen. I think we'll have reels of somebody is going to be on their knees, like actually, like, fucking bawling, like chest out, head back, bawling, just for the camera points. I think that's 100% going to happen. I think that at some point there will be, so of course, if this during presidency, JD Vance comes in, who gives a fuck, right? Like, literally nobody's gonna fucking care. All right, he's a jackass. He's probably worse than Trump, but cult of personality, dead, in my opinion. I don't think that there's going to be anybody like Trump or even close. Do I think the RNC is, capable of running itself and being able to sustain? Hell no. I think it's going to die off pretty fucking quick. So here's the problem, okay? Me just kind of like stretching this out. We're going into hypotheticals. Let's have a good time, okay? So at this point, Trump's dead. All right, there's a huge outcry within the Republican Party to find the next leader, right? And in that process, they end up going through this whole catalog of not dealing with or supporting JD Vance, right? Because we're going to just take the extreme route here. We know that it's going to fall to to Vance. He's gonna take the reins. We know that. All right, so there's unless Vance dies or just decides to step away for some odd fucking reason, it's not happening. You go from VP to president. That's just how it goes. But the question is, will he win? No. So we're not gonna entertain this here. Let's try and have a little bit more fun here. So we go down the train, right? All right, who's gone for it? Who's maybe had a chance? And let's see what we can do here. So first on the list, you have RFK, right? RFK Jr. So I don't think health-wise, great idea. It's just not happening. He doesn't have the oratory. It's just, he's boring. He's kind of fucking crazy. And I'm going to be honest with you, he looks really fucking gross. So if I don't appeal, I'm just going to go ahead and say, fuck no. All right. We're not going to take the lens of anybody else. It's just my lens here. So down the list, right? Up next, Tulsi Gabbard. She ran, didn't have a great time, got stomped out. That's it. Very weak in debates, in my opinion. Super creepy and also cultist. So no, we're just going to toss that over there onto the side. All right. Up next on the list. So let's just we're going to reach out onto to the sides. We're going to reach out everywhere. Okay. Greg Abbott, maybe we can pull maybe a governor from here. That wouldn't be a horrible idea. Better for senator usually, but we could do governor. Governor wouldn't be a bad idea. Okay. It's not impossible. It's been done. It's possible. So, fuck it. What if we do Greg Abbott? Okay. Here's the thing. Terrible track record. Has literally ran Texas into the ground. All right. My opinion, Texas is way worse off because of him now than ever. And that's saying something. Texas has seen some shit. It's dog shit, governors, but not the point. So we're going to continue moving down the line. All right. And this is really where you start kind of like you're running dry. You got the Noams left. Sure. But here's the thing. Everybody knows she shot her dogs, maybe. It's been reported that it was multiple dogs. So is the general populace is that even going to be 30%? No, it's going to be absolute blowout, super majority, like horrible loss. So best chances so far, all right, best chances is maybe RFK, maybe. Just like overall, we're just going to kind of take a look over it. Because look, here's the thing. Okay, sure, we can say Marco Rubio maybe, but I think he's fucking trashed. Look, I think he is just gone. Dog water. But maybe. But here's the thing. What kind of ticket would you be looking at, right? Rubio, Noam? Fuck no. All right? Rubio and fucking, who else can we think about here? I mean, it just doesn't, none of it really rings, okay? So, let's pull from the Senate. Let's just think a little bit here. What can we pull from the Senate? Could you see a Marjorie Taylor Greene and Marco Rubio lineup? Or J.D. Vance and Boebert? Do we think she's going to make it till then? Probably not. I don't even know if she still has her seat, actually. I'm a little on the loop on the Boebert, but I just kind of wanted to rehash the dumpster fire that this current administration has been. And we're just getting started. That's the thing. We're just getting started. And he is worse by the day. He is not going to last long. I listened to an interview of his the other day, and it was just him rambling about different magnets and about how we need to get magnets. And the South Korean president absolutely shat on him and asked him if he was going to go and meet Kim Jong-un and ask about building a Trump Tower in North Korea and shit. And Trump just sat there like a fucking dumbass, just clueless, no idea of what he was talking about, because his brain is fucking mush. All right, it's obvious whenever you listen to him speak for more than an hour. The man, look, people shout on Joe Biden for stuttering, all right, but the man could talk. I could watch him for hours. All right, he could talk, and he had his own cadence. He had his stutters. He liked to speak slow sometimes, like I do, but I don't think that there was ever a question about whether he spoke better or had better oratory skills than Trump. I just think everybody lied to themselves. You know, you sure you had the oldest president, but he still did better than Trump. And that's in the books, man. You know, that's the shit. All right, you can say whatever the fuck you want. All right, you can tell yourself whatever the fuck you want, but the proof is in the pudding, and his actions speak for themselves. You don't need to sit there and tell me he's great and all this shit. I could watch him taking a shit on your porch while you're telling me he's the greatest thing on earth. Nothing would change their mind until it hits their pocket. And Jesus, we're heading there. We are heading to very dark times economically. It's not getting better. And unfortunately, that's just the reality of the Trump administration. They thrive on this chaos. And a lot of them have made billions. They have made money off of our suffering. There's a lot of people that will never realize that. It's kind of crazy to think about it. But even with Bush, man, here's the thing. Bush, Trump doesn't compare to any president that has ever held the office before him, I'll tell you that. Okay? And I think Bush, you know, is a man that led a country to war multiple times, all right? He was a special kind of president, charismatic wise, you know. And you can say that, you know, sure, it's not the same, but I think there's a big difference in the times, you know. There's a huge access to social media and phones and internet access and social media platforms and all of that. And I think it makes it easier for people to be out and to be known, you know. But I don't think it means that he's any special. You know, I think all these threats are dog shit threats. It's just him showing how scared he is. You know, and he's got a lot to be scared about. He's going to die. And he's taking the country with him. You know, I'd be scared too, dude. Like, if I knew I was a moment away from death because I'm fucking dying because my veins are, you know, taking a shit on me, I'd be terrified, man. It's like knowing that you have cancer, but you can't tell the country is the worst part, because it's like this untold thing that presidents just don't come out with their illnesses. Like, FDR set this horrible standard, man. And I don't blame him. You know, I don't blame FDR specifically, but I do think that the medical secrecy standards are a really sad thing for this country, and, you know, kind of going hand in hand with how old some people can be in the Senate and, you know, Congress as a whole. I think it's a very unfortunate part of our system that those people can't age out, you know. And, you know, like we saw with Feinstein, and, you know, it's just the whole age aspect is a crazy thing, because Ruth Bader Ginsburg really fucked us over, man. You know, that's. Ugh. She could have retired. She could have let Obama pick her replacement. She could have done the government and the world a justice, a favor, but nope. She could not do that. And that is something that really has haunted us forever. The selfishness of our leaders to be able to give up power to the next generation. And, well, I just want to say that it's not just a fact of going through all these different processes, of having the seat, holding the seat, and never giving the seat up, and then fucking over the next generation for a century. And when you think about how long some of these folks can live, I really do mean this affects generations upon generations to come. And it's horrifying, the effects that the Trump administration will have. And when you think about what this is going to be like 20 years from now, God, the damage that is being done to our military as well is insane. You know, his administration is so bad at their jobs, man. You know, they tried a summit with Ukraine. They did this whole shit that, you know, it looked good on TV. Don't get me wrong. They said it went great. It was the best thing ever, blah, blah, blah. But there's still no meeting with Putin and Zelensky. And at the end of the day, Ukraine is still being bombed every day. And this is, at the end of the day, Trump's failures, once again, standing in our face. He said he would end it on his first day. You know, that fucking just really didn't materialize. And at the end of the day, you have multiple upon multiple failures of Trump's that hurt so many. You know, his idea with Doge cost millions their lives. Our USAID programs were some of the most beneficial things for humanitarian groups across the world. And we just let that food rot, man. It's a really terrible thing, but that is the state of the world. And that is the state of our government specifically, is committing crimes and saying we didn't do it. So, up next, people will continue to be kidnapped off the streets and sent to random countries they've never heard of. Families will be broken up. Children will be left without their parents. Children will be sent into adoption centers. Millions upon millions of these will happen. Unless we do something. And that something is vote for the fucking left, dude. I ain't telling you to vote for, but listen, there's only one party that is not saying or going to kidnap your ass and ship you to fucking Uganda, alright? I don't know how to make this any more clear, okay? I know some of you guys like to hem and haw about some shit in regards to both sidesism, but listen, we're adults here, alright? That both sides shit is bullshit. At the end of the day, it's only important because we need to be able to say to our kids and our grandkids that we did something. And I'm going to be pretty proud with my answer. But there's some people I know that will not. Oh, Lord, I pray for our country. You guys have a good day. And thank you for coming and listening to another episode of the Chug Life Podcast. See ya.